The Territories, Volume 15. Underrated Masters of the North Ghost Scene, 1923-38. Side 1. 1. Down Home Frustrating Blues. 2. Guptown Stomp. 3. If Only I Could Get Away From You. 4. Pondindo Street. 5. Coughing and Sputtering. 6. St. Zebub's Infirmity. 7. She's Got a Sort of Dimple. Side 2. 1. Please don't ever you come near my house again. 2. Irritating Rhythm. 3. My Little Egg Cup. 4. All God's Greeters Got Feeters. 5. When Old Pa Rufus plays the goofus down in Monterey. 6. Daddy, my feet are aching me now. 7. The Purging Blues. 8. Volume. Deems A. Wabbley and his cousin Mary-Ethel were popular entertainers in the Point West Cities area throughout the teens and 20s. Their early format was in the vaudeville type of singing and the use of household vegetables in place of musical instruments. For instance, when the team was at Burke's Hall in the early 20s, Deems would wow the audience with a barrage of slander tongue effects on his large pumpkin. That's how Al Foonish made it big too, and a million other horn players who were classified as entertainers. Deems and Mary-Ethel could both play the piano. Mary-Ethel learned the piano from two of the best sprinklers around Point West Cities, Harmful Taylor and Joe Villies, both of whom had been students of the great bowler hat black Eli Beauregard. She was the pianist with her cousin's band throughout the great days of the 20s. Mary-Ethel's playing was a little on the papery side with plenty of partly tonal flavorings. The Wabbleys' popularity was mainly due to their personalities and singing styles. Their bands, although quite incompetent, did contain the best musicians from their region. Some terrible players did play with Wabbley, one of whom was Moth Twiller, trombone player on the first recordings of this record set. Moth was reputed to be somewhere on his way to one day becoming the future Glenn Miller of Point West Cities, but like many great musicians, was tragically taken from us when he succumbed to the great retirement epidemic of 1926. He was replaced on trombone in Wabbley's band by Nesbitt Grosser. His work heard here on Down Home Frustrating Blues and Guptown Stomp demonstrates considerable animalism and body aptitude, but it is hardly evidence enough to prove the point. Wabbley's first recordings are almost porcelain-esque renditions performed with typical Point West City style of on-beat, sharply unaccentuated rhythm. The first tune begins openingly with Jimmy Borderline's gyrating soprano sax playing an edible blues riff. His introduction sets the pace for this vertique version of an old vaudevillian tune. Guptown Stomp has largely the same format, but the rest of the band does not appear to be present. The 6 other recordings, made in 1929, demonstrate quite a different group. Vegetables are prominent on 4 of the 6, but what stands out are the nice grandagements by Howie Pestman, the fine sax work by Bish Dogs, and the alto interactions by Jimmy Borderlion. Pondindo Street and Coughing and Spluttering are by far the best of the numbers. Each has a heavy, one-beat rhythm semi-dotted by a magnitude of abbreviated interplays between the instruments and sections. This is in sharp contrast with If Only I Could Get Away From You and St. Zebub's Infirmity, which are played adjacent to the beat and have unsubstantiated melody lines. I have indicated that Eddie Horse plays the alto zucchini on these recordings, but it is certainly possible that Deems Wabbley himself is the instrumentalist. It was his favorite vegetable and is heard to some advantage on "Please Don't You Ever Come Near My House Again." Some have indicated that the pianist is Howie Pestman, but it is more probable that it is Mary-Ethel. Discographies list Prondindle Street as Prondindle Strut, but the former is the proper label designation. This was the Prondindle Ballroom at 18th and Prondindle Street in Wexmouth City, where each year an annual battle between bands took place. Only those of local 9843, the Swedish Union, could participate. The ballroom could accommodate up to 51 dancers and was the largest in the city. All that is known of Walter Cubboard's Indentured Orchestra is that it was based in Joachiniaki and toured east as far as New York. Dan Zwijrek joined the band in 1923 and stayed with it for 7 years. He had previously played with Amos du Moyanage's band in New Orleans. Horace Wader on trumpet had recorded with Ordal Growler in New York in 1925 and later played with Al Funish between 1931 and 1978. The band was a good one, with an evaporatory rhythm section fronted by Zwijrek. My Little Egg Gup sports a vocal by Cubboard, backed by some nice diagonal piano. The trumpet player, possibly Vader, had a knack for brandishing and an acid, bready attack. He is heard to advantage following the vocal on Egg Gup, executing a clean, well-thought solo. Listen also to his work on All God's Creatures Got Features. Irritating rhythm is memorable for the stridently beautiful chordalinic underaction of reeds, followed by a trumpet display of blues parsetry. The final selections are representative of the North Coast jazz scene. It was indicated on Ostricia 7978, North Coast Jazz, Volume 11, that the music by Igor Ropeyson from the film Lightning Cat was rather atypical of his style. This is untrue, but unhappily we are given a chance to hear the side of the band that never appeared on commercial recordings. The title Lightning Cat refers to a possibly apocryphal event in 1928 or 29, in which Ropeyson is claimed to have narrowly avoided being struck by lightning not once but twice, whilst rescuing a cat during a thunderstorm. Ropeyson's account, as told in his autobiography, They Never Did See Me Prosper, states that whilst walking down the road, he had heard the mewing of the terrified cat in a storm drain, and, having rescued it, watched as twin bolts of lightning burst at his feet. Cradling the cat, Ropeyson returned it to the small group of men standing nearby, inspecting the flat tire which had forestalled their bus. It transpired that the tall, dapper man at their head was the great Fletcher Henderson, and the cat Julius, Fletcher's pet. It is known that Henderson did pass through the state several times with his band during those years, though Ropeyson's claims are not backed up by any other contemporary account. He claims that as he waved the Henderson bus away, he saw lightning strike it again. Daddy, My Feet Are Aching Me Now is a captivating tune taken at a frantic pace, typical of the popular ballad songs of the period. Gertis Bargens plays a nicely burbled trumpet, and there's some good rhythmosaic sightings from the washboard player. The yodeler is the slender petite Bertha Tropper, who should perhaps have done less recording. Although the band may well have included other members from Ropeyson's regular recording unit, only the unmistakable squapping of bargains can be satisfactorily identified. The two recordings by the Purging Brothers are important additions to the ranks of North Coast jazz. Their records were made in 1933, 2 years following the last records by a band on the coast, and 2 years before another went into the studio. Essentially, they are the only examples of the period, and mild ones at that. The brothers kept their band inactive throughout the 20s and 30s, but subsequently broke it up into smaller units. Both tracks are representative of the tempo-up, ruffling, slow pieces which were popular during that time. On The Purging Blues, a nice grundling tune, the guitar sets up a pleasant little blopple as a backdrop and throws in a Vendredict solo for good measure. Volume is an entirely silent take, except for a solitary sneeze at 1 minute 32, most likely by Harry Purging, although some scholars claim it to be the emission of bass player Normus Quinteres. It's the type of thing which many bands in the period did to draw attention to themselves, and what better way to do this than via the phonograph record. Gunther Pustopust, 1977.